Okay, so when you think of Brazil, what pops into your head? Probably tropical beaches, samba, and year-round sunshine, right? Well, what if I told you there's a whole region of the country where the winters are literally freezing? A place where German Oktoberfest traditions flow just as freely as the beer, and where rugged, poncho-wearing cowboys live this intensely smoky life around open trench fires. Crazy, right? This is the completely unexpected, temperate reality of southern Brazil. It's a region where a tough climate and demanding geography forced a really fascinating collision between indigenous survival skills and European culinary traditions. Welcome to This Explainer. I am super thrilled to be your guide today on what is basically a massive geographical and culinary road trip through Brazil's coldest region. Together, we're going to break down exactly how human migration and the unforgiving Atlantic forest biome completely rewrote the menu of an entire culture. So, here's our roadmap for the trip. First, we'll lay down the baseline history of the region's roots. Then, we hit the road state by state, checking out the smoky meat culture of Rio Grande do Sul, exploring the really stark coastal and mountain duality of Santa Catarina, and finally, wrapping up with the ultimate cultural melting pot of Paraná. Let's jump right in. Part 1, Raízes da Cozinha Sulista, or the melting pot of the South. To really get this food, you've got to understand the environment it was born in. We are talking about a temperate climate dominated by the dense, often unforgiving Atlantic forest. The folks arriving here, they couldn't just plant whatever they felt like. They had to play by nature's rules and adapt to what the land would actually accept. And man, were there a lot of newcomers. The southern Brazilian culinary identity is basically this giant patchwork quilt. You've got waves of Germans, Italians, Russians, Poles, and Ukrainians, along with some early agricultural groundwork laid by Spanish Jesuits. Each group brought their own farming tricks and deep dietary heritages to the table. But here's where the story gets really brilliant. These immigrants couldn't just rely on their European seeds. To survive the cold and this totally unfamiliar terrain, they had to adopt indigenous staples. A huge, literally life-saving example of this is yerba mate. It's a native South American plant used to brew this incredibly warming, highly caffeinated hot infusion. You can actually see this adaptation perfectly captured in the chimarrão. Brewed in a gourd and sipped through a metal straw. This isn't just a drink, folks. It is a daily, highly communal ritual down south. Think of it as an enduring indigenous tradition that European colonizers fully embraced. And today, it's a cornerstone of identity shared by absolutely all Southern cultures. Seriously, it's everywhere. Moving on to part 2, Sabores do Pampa Gaúcho, meat, fire, and the borderlands. Welcome to Rio Grande do Sul. This is the land of the Pampa and the Gaucho, the iconic Southern cowboy. Down here, the borders with Uruguay, Argentina, and Paraguay kind of blur together, and the absolute center of the culinary universe is fire. This is churrasco. But hold on, forget those modern, fancy steakhouses you might be thinking of. This is the raw, traditional art of the ground fire. Just imagine the intense aroma of wood smoke as massive cuts of beef, sheep, and game meats are slow roasted on skewers pitched straight over an open trench in the earth. It's rugged, it's communal, and it was entirely born out of subsistence cattle ranching on the wide open plains. But hey, it's not all beef over the fire. Let's break down this iconic dish from the Italian immigrants in Caxias do Sul, Galeto na brasa, or young chicken on the embers. It's almost like a mini cooking show, right? Step 1, you bathe the bird in this rich, savory marinade. We're talking sage, garlic, oil, and white wine. Step 2, you cook it bone side first over the coals to gently heat the meat through. And for the grand finale, step 3, you flip it skin side down to get that absolutely perfect, blistering crispness. People love this so much, it's actually recognized as the intangible cultural heritage of the city. Now, those same Italian immigrants needed some seriously calorie-dense foods to survive the freezing pampas, which gave us some incredible winter comfort foods. We see carbohydrate-heavy and intensely sweet adaptations. Take sagu, for example. They took tapioca pearls, a totally local ingredient, and brilliantly repurposed them by cooking them in red wine and spices, serving it all up with a vanilla cream. Or get this, papos de anjo. It literally translates to angel's double chin, which is just the best name ever. They're aerated egg yolks, baked and then soaked in a heavenly spiced syrup of sugar, clove, and cinnamon. Pure survival fuel, but make it delicious. And check this out. Look at this gorgeous plate of tortelle de abobora. This is a direct descendant of the Italian tortelli di zucca from the Lombardy region. But here's the catch.
When the Italians got to Brazil, they couldn't find their traditional European pumpkins. So what did they do? They adapted. They started using the locally thriving Japanese pumpkin to fill their fresh, egg-based pasta. If there's one single thing you take away from this, let it be this. Southern Brazilian food is a masterclass in relentless adaptation.
All right, part 3, Santa Catarina, Mar and Serra, the state of duality. If you really want to grasp Santa Catarina, you've got to wrap your head around its stark duality. It's kind of like two different worlds. Down on the coast, or the littoral, the culinary vibe is deeply Portuguese, heavily influenced by Azorean immigrants. The diet there is all about fresh seafood, especially the tainia fish. But journey just a few hours inland up into the freezing mountains, the Serra, and the culture does a total 180. Suddenly, you're in deep woods European farming territory. German and Italian influences completely take over, resulting in a diet packed with pork, duck, and those rich cured sausages they call embutidos. To get a real taste of the coast, take a look at this caldeirada de frutos do mar. It is quite literally a simmering celebration of coastal abundance. We're talking local squid, octopus, shrimp, and mussels, all stewing beautifully together in this rich fish broth layered with vibrant garlic, onion, bell peppers, and fresh parsley. It is the maritime soul of the Azores served right up in a bowl. Okay, now bundle up because we are heading into the chilly mountains, and the aromas change completely to these warm, spiced mountain delights. Up here you'll find maraco recheado, which is a duck generously stuffed with a rich mix of its own offal, beef, and bread, served alongside red cabbage and apple puree. You've also got schnitzel, which is pork seared perfectly in butter and topped with a creamy smoked paprika sauce. And for dessert, no question, it's authentic, flaky Apfelstrudel. All of this amazing food ties directly back to their German heritage, which is captured so perfectly in their rich pork sausages and preserved cabbage, or Schuhkrut. See, because the winters up there were so incredibly long and harsh, food preservation wasn't just some fun culinary choice, it was literally a matter of life and death. Today, that survival technique is celebrated in a massive way at Santa Catarina's Oktoberfest. It's a huge homage to how these immigrants kept their culture alive through their gastronomy. Bringing us to part 4, Carana e Pinhão, the ultimate melting pot. So, fun fact to kick this off, the capital of Paraná is Curitiba, which in the indigenous Tupi language literally translates to land of abundant pines. This state is the ultimate cultural stew, and looking at our timeline really shows you why. First off, you have the foundational indigenous Tupi tribes. Then, the Portuguese colonizers roll in. Following them are the tropeiros, those nomadic cattle drovers who transported goods all across the continent. And finally, a massive wave of Eastern European immigrants sweeps in. Every single one of these distinct groups layered their own ingredients and cooking methods right into the local pot. And the one ingredient that ties this whole crazy stew together? The pinhão. This majestic, massive native pine nut is hands down the undisputed king of the region. Originally, it was a crucial, life-saving carbohydrate for indigenous tribes during those brutal winters. But it was so good and so nutritious that it was quickly adopted by literally every single wave of new arrivals. Honestly, there is no better representation of this culinary collision than the entrevero de pinhão. Picture this. A hearty, super rustic mountain stew where those boiled native pine nuts are perfectly married to European butchery. They're tossed into a sizzling pan with vibrant bell peppers, rich sausage, cuts of beef, and heavy smoked bacon. It's literally the entire history of Paraná in a single bite. Because of all this deep historical interaction, Paraná's pantry is just wildly eclectic. I mean, on the exact same menu, you might find kira, an indigenous broken corn dish, sitting right next to authentic Polish pierogies. You've got native manacubiu fruit and pupunha palm hearts, all served up alongside fresh coastal seafood. It demonstrates this beautiful, chaotic melting pot of Polish, indigenous, and coastal influences that you simply are not going to find anywhere else in the world. So as we zoom out and step back from this whole journey, the big takeaway here is pretty clear. Southern Brazilian food is not just some European import carelessly pasted onto South America. No way. It is a brilliant, totally necessary adaptation to a really demanding geography. The immigrants brought their recipes for sure, but the Atlantic forest, that provided the ingredients. Which leaves us with a final, really fascinating thought to chew on. When you think about everything we've explored today, from Italian pasta stuffed with Japanese pumpkin to Polish dumplings whipped up next to indigenous pine nuts, It begs the question, is traditional food defined by the land it grows in or by the people who travel to it? Thank you so much for exploring with me today on this explainer. I'll let you ponder that one.